I finally managed to get hold of a device that has intrigued me now for getting on for 20 years. It's a music entertainment system. It's difficult to explain without seeing it, but it's this thing behind me here. It's a Little Jammer set. The one I've got is the Little Jammer meets Kenwood edition that first came out in Japan in 2004. In a nutshell, this is a set of animatronic musicians that play music from interchangeable cartridges that are inserted into a central playback unit. This version comes with a cartridge that contains 25 jazz-styled instrumentals, but a number of additional cartridges were available. I've got one of those here, and this contains music from the movies. The whole thing is really a modern-day reimagining of a music box, one that plays custom-programmed reinterpretations of popular tunes via a synthesizer and accompanied by a synchronized band. Now, this is a used example imported from Japan. I've wanted to see one of these in person since 2004, and now I'm going to finally see whether or not it was worth the wait. I do have my doubts. Okay, now there's quite a bit of stuff to set up in those boxes, so before we get into those, I'm just going to have a look through these things and then move them out of the way. So we've got the infrared remote control here. I'm glad this is included. I don't know whether or not all these controls are accessible via that unit as well. We've got this item here, which is quite lightweight and just made out of plastic. I believe that's the subwoofer for the whole system. The rest of it, the speakers, they're all included inside these boxes, so we'll look at those in a bit. On the back, we've got all the connectors for the players, and down at the bottom here it says guest, drums, sax, guitar, bass and piano. So you plug all these ones in as standard on the right, and then you can swap in different guest players. We've got an audio output 3.5mm jack, data, I don't know what you do with that, and again we've got a date of 2004 on the back of this as well. Now around the front we do have some controls, and there's a bit up here which I think should open up. I'm not too sure. Let's see. There we go. What's that? Ah, that's where our cartridge goes in. Okay, well that makes sense. No cartridge in here at the moment. I presume it's included in one of these boxes. But I have noticed that this plastic hasn't been peeled off. So I know I get loads of complaints now when I do this. People say it's stupid. So if that's you, move along. Oh yeah, that's it. Take it off. Okay, let's get the band back together. So we'll take these out carefully. First off, yeah, there's the cartridge for the music. I think that's the bass chap. Yeah, there we go. Got his guitar there, that one, and saxophone. Right, they're all looking in good condition, these so far. So that leaves drums and what else? Oh, piano. Okay, so the idea with this is that each of these is a separate speaker, and they've got a character on the top that moves about as that instrument is played. So in this case we've got the saxophone chap. The saxophone sound comes out of here, and this plugs into the main unit. And similarly for all the other ones, the instrument that they're playing is the sound that comes out of the bass. In this case it is the bass, and I'll assemble that in a second. Now, by having each individual sound in each character, you can then space them out. So you can have a kind of surround sound live stage effect, or at least that's the concept. I don't think it's going to quite live up to expectations, and my expectations are quite low. Okay, so that's everything. I'm happy to see that it all looks to be in really good condition, so all I need to do is plug it all together and switch it on. There are no instructions included inside the box, but I think we can figure this one out. Okay, we're all powered up. You'll see there's a clock on there. That's because you can use this as an alarm clock to wake you up with the music. But we'll switch it on, see what the screen says. Basic selection. Okay, Now, how do we play? If I just press that. Number 1, In the Mood. Okay, here we go. Unfortunately, after adjusting the volume a couple of times, the remote just died on me, so I need to have a look at that. There are some buttons on there that aren't on the main unit, so I could do with getting it working. Okay, so with the remote out of action for the time being, I'm restricted just to using these buttons on the front to control this. I've got access to the volume, the power on off. I can also move through the tracks by pressing this button on the right to go through them sequentially. Notice there is no back button though. We do have a play and pause, and we've got a stop, which I think would also turn off the alarm, given the symbols above it. This button with a plus on it to the left, though, that adds on 10. So I'm at track 6 at the moment. That's track 16. Now, there's 25 tracks on here, so if I press it again, it tops out at 25. Now, if I press this one, we're back round to number 1 again. So I can get through the tracks relatively quickly, because if I want to get to track number 1 from track number 9, press that a couple of times, and then press that. There's quite a variety of tunes on the included cartridge, including some Beatles tracks as well as various old standards. All of them, though, are reinterpreted for the 5-man group with a jazz flavour. Sometimes, though, the saxophone is playing the part of a clarinet, and for some songs the piano is an organ. The guitar might be electric or acoustic or bass or lead, but you can't get too hung up on the fine details. These 5 guys are doing their best, and there's a surprising amount of personality that comes through from these simple character designs. Well, I don't know if it's come across from what I've said so far in the video, but this thing has really won me over in a way that I was just not expecting. I'd seen videos showing these off years ago, and I'd just dismissed it as a silly, frivolous, overpriced novelty. And yet now I've got it here in person. Yeah, it's still a silly, frivolous, overpriced novelty, and yet one that is incredibly fun to see in action. There's just something about it that appeals. It's just bizarre and ridiculous, and yet I can't help but love it. I mean, it's really put a big smile on my face, this thing. And I do appreciate the attention to detail that's got into it, more than you might think when you first look at it. So let's take a bit of a closer look at the figures. I think my favourite is the piano player. His left hand plays the low notes, his right hand the high ones, as it should do. And when he gets to a particularly funky part of a tune, you'll see his head move from side to side. And if you look behind the piano, you can see that he's also tapping a foot at the same time. I also really like the drummer character too. There's a lot going on here. Look out for the hat jumping up when there's a cymbal crash, or is that a hi-hat? I don't know if it is. I'm not a drummer. It would make sense if it was, though. The rest of the movements are very much in sync as well, and when I first saw one of these years ago, I just thought the characters were just jerking around pretty much randomly. I'd no idea that their movements were so closely and accurately timed to the music. And of course, yes, it's a novelty. It's quite basic in what it does. There's a lot of room here for improvement. The sound is like something out of an 8-bit games console. But there's also this attention to detail that goes above and beyond, that exceeds the scope of the product, that shows that the people behind this really cared about doing the best job that they could. And whilst this set is capable of instrumentals only, there is the occasional spoken word, and these come from the direction of the piano player,
1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
who you'll notice is the only one with a microphone.
1, 2, 3.
Again, an example of the attention to detail. In the past, you might have seen me demonstrate some music tutor devices, effectively standalone playback-only synthesizers, which were able to play back MIDI music via the built-in speaker, and on there you could isolate the individual instruments and mute them as required so that you could play along or learn that particular part. Well, I'm quite sure that this device is working along much the same principles. I presume the music is some kind of a MIDI file, and it's being decoded in the main unit here, which is effectively the synthesizer. Then the audio is being split out, sent off to the individual musicians here, along with control data, which accompanies it to animate that character. Now, you might remember from seeing those videos that I do appreciate listening to familiar tunes but stripped down to playback in some kind of MIDI version, and I think that might be one of the appeals of this thing. Now, when I first set this up, I had all of the players close together, and it sounded then like all of the sounds were coming from all of the speakers rather than being separated out. It turned out that much of the sound I was hearing was actually coming from the main speaker, which does play the bass side of everything. But with this hidden out of the way under a cushion and only one musician at a time plugged into it, you can hear how the individual player speakers just play their part of the tune. Now, I suspect that if the remote was working, I might be able to adjust the individual levels on the speakers. I'm waiting on a part for this. I'm going to see if I can get it working. If not, I'll get a replacement. However, I can see that a working remote would let me activate a random mode, possibly adjust the tempo, and add in an audience reaction sound between each song. At the moment, if it's left in play mode, the machine automatically plays through all the songs on a cartridge in order, with a short pause between each one. I did figure out, though, how to set the time and alarm on the device itself. The alarm can be any of the tracks that are on the cartridge, but on this occasion I selected that it play the demo song. The only issue is that once unplugged, the unit forgets the time. If I was planning on using this as an alarm clock, I'd probably just have to open it up and install a new battery backup. Now, let's just talk about the different versions of the Little Jammer. The one I've got is Little Jammer meets Kenwood from 2004. This is an upgrade to the original from 2003. I hunted around for information on the first version, expecting this one to just be slightly different, and I was surprised to find out that it looks like this, a far cruder device that seems to be aimed squarely at children. This first version also made its way over to the US, renamed as Rhythm Jam. There's also a Peanuts Jam edition. The song list for this, though, does have some Charlie Brown specific songs. However, the bulk of them look like they were shared with the other versions, and a few of those are also in my packing cart. So the Little Jammer meets Kenwood is a reimagining of the original concept, but more for adults, moving it upmarket to attract a more lucrative audience. Over time, this version gained a whole series of additional cartridges, as well as the option to expand the band with guest performers, a percussionist, and a trumpeter. Each of these came with their own cartridge, which included tracks that utilised their instrument. There was also a number of special editions, and an official Little Jammers Owners Club was started. This offered various exclusive accessories like a stage set, and there were also signs and stage lighting, perhaps those plugged into that data port that's on the back of my main unit. But talking of plugging things in, one very noticeable issue with the whole setup is the mess of wires that attach everything together. They're a necessity. They carry the power, the audio, the control data to each character, but you really do have to be careful when rearranging the players not to snap anything. I can see why some people created whole dioramas for their Little Jammers with false floors to hide the wires, and they added stage lighting and plenty more besides. I suppose it scratches that same itch that a model train set does, but focused around music instead. If you do a search for Little Jammer, singular, not Little Jammers, on YouTube, you'll see some of the setups that fans have created. You'll also see, though, that most of those videos feature the Little Jammer Pro rather than the version that I have. The Pro was the next and the final version, the full name being the Little Jammer Pro tuned by Kenwood, and it was introduced in 2006. And this was a big upgrade, especially in the quality of the audio, moving from 8 to 16-bit. It also used different cartridges and had its own range of accessories. The enhanced audio capabilities now supported vocals, and the singing was provided by guest vocalists that came again with their own cartridges. Now, I can't tell you how many Little Jammers Bandai sold, but there was a limited edition of the Pro version with a different colour scheme, which apparently was made to commemorate 100,000 total sales. While the very first version of this was aimed squarely at children, it's quite clear that the later editions, like this one here, are more for an adult market, if not exclusively for an adult market, because I've seen ones for sale sometimes on the auction sites, and clearly somebody's let a child play with it, and it's broken. It's very fragile, really. All the little instruments and the moving parts, you'll see them and everything's been snapped off. You can tell when a child's been near one of these. So no, this is something that has been designed for adults to play with, which seems a little bit strange perhaps in the West when you think of an adult toy along these lines. It's not the kind of thing that you think, oh, we wouldn't have that kind of thing. Well, we do, but we just concentrate it around certain times of the year. Around Christmas, you might have seen those Christmas villages that people put together. They spend a lot of money, they get lots of different houses, and there's a fair and there's a shop and there's a garage, all that kind of stuff, and they've got flashing lights on them, and the fair's got a wheel that goes round and it's playing Christmas tunes. So yeah, you get it all out at Christmas, you're allowed it then, but then you've got to put it all away again. Well, this is much the same thing, except you could keep it out all year long, and if you wanted, you could also get a Christmas cartridge for this as well. Now, if anyone's frantically typing away that I've increased the prices of these by featuring them in a video, I've got to say that ship sailed a long time ago, if the ship even existed in the first place, because these things were always expensive. But here are some examples of the Little Jammers prices before this video had finished being edited together. An unused peanut set, $1,400 US plus postage, and that seems to be about right, as there's another one of those being offered for sale at $1,500 US, including the postage. There's a couple of new in-box Little Jammer meets Kenwood striped jacket editions, one at $990 US and another at $650, but of course you're always going to pay over the odds if you buy new old stock, so let's find a used version. Yeah, sets like mine seem to be offered for around $500 US, or that's about £400 at the moment. Things really step up though if you want a Little Jammer Pro. 270,000 yen is about $1,800 US or £1,400. But then again, this set includes a singer, which new in box is going for $1,400 US or £1,100 on its own. So it seems like that set was a pretty good deal comparatively speaking, as here they're offering a used set without the vocalist for, again, $1,800 US. This used singer on their own is going for £800 or close to $1,000. So nothing about this is or was ever cheap. If you want any of this stuff, you'll either have to shop around, be patient, get lucky, or just throw a load of money at it. Far more than it's really worth. I'm not too sure when Bandai discontinued the Little Jammer range, but the website for the product, the Little Jammer Pro, was last updated in early 2009, after which it was abandoned and then a fan took it over for a while, so it looks like the product has perhaps been off the market for almost 15 years now. So the ones that are for sale on the auction sites are commanding quite high prices. Now, whether or not anyone's actually paying those top-end prices, I don't know. But there does seem to be some demand out there for the product still. There seem to be some fans of the Little Jammer. And I've got to say now, I'm one of those. I was not expecting to be, but after seeing this one, I've really got to see what new things the Little Jammer Pro added to this. I wanted to do a comparison between the two. So yeah, I've put in a bid and I've won a Little Jammer Pro from Japan. A bit faded, a bit dusty, but apparently fully working. So hopefully that will arrive, and in the future I'll be able to do a video where I can compare the two. I haven't managed to get the vocalist for it though. It seems like it might actually be cheaper to get a proper vocalist into the house to sing those songs rather than buy one of those. But I'll keep my eye out. Maybe one day I'll be able to find that as well. But yeah, that has been my look at the Little Jammer meets Kenwood edition. In the future, we'll have a look at the next one. And that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.